In the book of Job, chapter 40, verse 15, the scriptures read, "Look now at the behemoth or giant, which I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. See now, his strength is in his hips, and his power is in his stomach muscle. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are tightly knit. His bones are like beams of bronze, his ribs like bars of iron." On the inset there, you have a picture of a cedar tree. The average cedar tree is about 6 feet in diameter. It's nothing tiny. Some scriptures will have on the margin that behemoth might be a crocodile or say a hippo. But if you look at a hippo with its tiny rope-like tail, the elephant or even the crocodile, none of them have a tail like a cedar, 6 feet in diameter. It's something to think about. The question is about dinosaur. And now let me just tell you this here. As a teacher that's been teaching for many, many years, this question does come up. I was told recently by a brother in Christ that some people aren't interested in this topic. They say that people want to know if the church is warm or friendly. They don't want to know about apologetics. But we have to understand that America is going through what's called postmodernism. We may even be post-postmodernism, where people aren't interested in what's right or wrong or any objective standards, but in relationships. But we have to understand that much of the world, especially in the Asian countries, they are not postmodern. They're a generation or two behind us. They are still very much, if you could use that term, modernistic. They still look for right or wrong. I have students ask me these questions all the time, especially those from China. They ask me these questions, but I notice that the American students typically don't ask these questions. So we see there is a difference in culture as well as generation. But I can assure you that sooner or later the question will come up. The Barna survey showed in 2011 and 2016 that 46% roughly of people who fell away listed one of the reasons they left was because they could not see the Bible as being coherent or consistent with modern science, especially the idea of dinosaurs that supposedly tell that's how we came about and that's where death came about, and it wasn't through sin or anything like that. So the Bible teaches us in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15, which we'll read at the end, that we must be prepared to give an answer for why we believe what we believe. So what's the problem with dinosaurs? Well, let's look at this here. Dinosaurs are fun and they're exciting. They're everywhere. Stuffed dolls, t-shirts, baseball hats, movies. Everyone's into dinosaurs. Good dinosaur, bad dinosaur, ferocious dinosaur. They're exciting because they're so unusual and they're so different. So what's the problem or issue? Well, the problem or issue is this. High school textbooks, even elementary school textbooks, teach as a proven fact that dinosaurs roamed the earth for millions of years and died out 65 to 75 million years before man even evolved an ape-like ancestor to appear on earth. Is this true? Partially true? Or is it basically not true? We have to be able, as intelligent Christians, to be able to answer this question here. The Bible seems to teach that all things were created by God roughly within the same week. But then that came only after Adam and Eve had sinned. That's why Jesus came to earth. Now, we talked about this 2 weeks ago, about how I don't have any problem with old earth creationists. I have no problem with middle earth. I have no problem with young earth creationists. They're all fine with me as long as we preach Jesus and lead souls to Christ. If preaching theistic evolution leads people to Christ, then I'm all for that. Okay. But if death existed millions of years before man appeared, then Jesus' life and death was unnecessary if we believe what the Bible says. Why do we need a Savior to save us from sin and death when death reigned on earth millions of years before man ever appeared on planet Earth? So how do we explain this here? In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, it tells us about this very thing. Since by man came death, by man also came the resurrection of the dead. Whereas in Adam all die, even so in Christ all shall be made. But there's a progressive order it mentions here. Then comes the end, and the last enemy that will be put to an end or destroyed is death. So Christ came for this very purpose, to be the antidote for sin. So the question I oftentimes have students ask me, do you believe in evolution? And I'm going to answer your question. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to tell you if I believe in evolution. We all believe in evolution. Every single one of us, you and others, regardless of whether you admit it or not, we all believe in evolution. It's just a matter of how much evolution you believe in, how much natural evolution you believe is possible. And what does the evidence really show? But we all do believe in evolution. After all, evolution simply means change through time. Things do change. Yes, I believe in evolution. Things do evolve, things do change. Some says, well, I'm talking about biological evolution, that living things change in order to adapt to its environment. And yes, I believe in biological evolution. I believe that living things do change in order to adapt to its environment. We have the evolution of domestic dogs from wild wolves as they adapted to living alongside man. Man is dog's best friend, or is it the other way around? Or how about microevolution? That changes in living things over time can produce variations within the same basic kind, which can be the same species, same genes, or even same family. Or when we talk about higher order in the plants, it could even be higher in the taxonomic order. Yes, I believe in microevolution, this horizontal evolution. I believe that wolves has evolved into variations of domesticated dogs. We have double the number of dogs variation that existed only 250 years ago. So we have variations of dogs that didn't even exist 250 years ago. That is evolution, and I believe in that. But what about this one called macroevolution or Darwinian or grand scale evolution? That says that given enough time, you can have life come from non-life, and that over a period of time, it can produce all the living forms that we have on planet Earth today. You have invertebrates turn into vertebrates and reptiles to mammals. So I believe in this. Yes, to a certain degree. I'm probably 3.5. It's not hard for me to believe that such things as lizards could evolve into legless lizards and lose the eyelid and become snakes, or that something so fish-like as a tadpole may have evolved possibly from fish. It doesn't take hard for me to believe that, but I'm not saying I believe in it because I don't have any proof of that, but I don't have a problem with that. I do have problem with things like life coming from non-life and the whole idea of grand scale evolution. We have to understand what is hard science or empirical science. Empirical science is that which is observable, testable, repeatable, verifiable, and falsifiable. When we talk about origin science, it's not observable, it's not testable, it's not repeatable, nor verifiable. Only circumstantially can it be verified or falsified. So we have to understand that we cannot test the question of macroevolution in a laboratory. But here is a kindergarten book, a very short pop-up history of life on it. This is a kindergarten book that they put in public schools. And in the book, They show a few pop-up of a fish turning into an amphibian, turning into a small reptile, into a dinosaur in a mouth, and then in the last page, into a hairy caveman. And the last page, it said, millions of years ago, life on Earth started in the ocean. Then it moved on to land and eventually led to you. Can you imagine a teacher reading that to the kindergarten students? What kind of effect it may have? Well, what's the evidence? Dinosaurs living millions of years ago is the poster child of evolution, considered to be one of the proof that evolution, as taught in textbook, is indeed true. But we have to understand that the so-called geologic column, as taught in textbook, the geologic age, is found nowhere in the world. There's not one place on Earth where we have all 13 of the geologic stratus found in the proper sequence, all intact. No place on Earth. So why do we teach that which is facts when we don't have those facts? In fact, 3/4 of the Earth is missing more than half of those layers taught in textbooks. What happened to them? We ask questions like, well, how long does it take to form caves? Here's Carlsbad National Cavern. Well, people said, but I thought scientists already figured out how old it was. Well, Jerry Trout, an expert on caves, serving with the United States Forest Service, Parks and Service, in an interview in Descent, Arizona Highway magazine, pointed this out. In 1924 to 1988, there was a visitor sign above the cave entrance that said, Carlsbad Cavern. This cave is 260 million years old. In 1988, it was changed to say 7 to 10 million years of age. Then for a little while, it said 2 million years old. Now the sign is gone. What does it tell you? Well, it should be able to tell you that it was really based largely on educated guesswork by very intelligent people. But it's not factual, nor is it proof. But it's just an educated guess. And continuing on in the same article, Marilyn Taylor wrote, geologists don't know how long cave developments take. And while some believe that cave decorations such as the stalactites from the ceiling take years to form, they say at half an inch, every 100 years in some cases. But Jerry Trout, a specialist, says that with photo monitoring, he has proof positive natural stalactites growing several inches in a matter of days, given the right circumstances of biocene material above ground, the thickness of the ground, see above the cave, the type of limestone or bentonite has, given the right circumstance, the stalactite can grow several inches in a matter of days. So just how good is the science of studying fossils of paleontology? Am I bagging on them? No. I think paleontologists are very, very intelligent people. I think all in all, the science of paleontology is very good. But you have to understand that their objectivity is still influenced by the same age-old problem that we all face. The desire for fame, fortune, and praise. So sometimes we see things that really aren't there. For example, some of you may remember the 19th century, the Bone War, with the great dinosaur rush. We have, wow, look at this, the president of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, Edward Cope, versus the president of the National Academy of Science. Aren't these distinguished gentlemen? Well, they were neither gentle, nor were they objective. During the Bone War, the Great Rush, paleontologists, they spied, they hired people to steal, they made lies, they planted fake fossils, they dynamite quarries that belonged to the other team. They had people spy with binoculars over the hill. They poured down and had actually see brawls out to see the open area. They accused one another of different things, had publicity stunts. They bribed people and extorted people. Eventually, Marsh won, and Cope became impoverished through it all. See, uh, Charles Marsh had the money to manipulate. Edward Cope was a brilliant man, but he didn't have the clout, money to defend himself. Look at this here. The Iguanodon, 1809, one of the very first, if not the first one. So it's either the first or second dinosaur ever discovered. And look and see if in the upper left right here with the, you see my arrow here. This is the first, they said this is from the fossil. This is how an iguanodon looked like. Then it said that it walked upright, not sprawled like a lizard here, but sprawled upright. Then it stood upright on two legs. And now the current teaching is that it had the tail raised off the ground so it can hop almost like a kangaroo. So from the same fossils, we have 4 different pictures. Quite interesting. And look at the official state fossil for the state of Colorado, Stegosaurus amethystis. Well, the only problem is we don't know if the plates were sticking out to the side like this original drawing, or if it's still upright, pointing up to the sky, like in this drawing here, which is what you see currently in most textbooks now. The evidence apparently is that probably was like this here. But we found fossils that had different number of spikes. Were there natural variation, or are they different species? Or is there a difference between male and female? And did it have 2 brains or 1? I grew up, Ed and the older members in our group probably remember textbooks saying that the stegosaurus had 2 brains because the brain of the stegosaurus was the size of a walnut. And it was saying, well, how could it possibly control a 2-ton body with a brain the size of a walnut? But then they found what apparently was a hollowed area above the hip that possibly was a ganglion of nerves that serves as a second brain. So we were taught for over 60 years or 70 years that they had 2 brains. But recently they discovered a cast, and apparently that hollow area contained one of the endocrine glands, and it was not a second brain. So we could teach things in textbooks, even if found in a museum, and it could be incorrect. And by the way, the Colorado State fossil, if you haven't heard, in the last 2 years, they found out there is no such thing as a Stegosaurus amethystis. It was probably a Stegosaurus synops, a different species, and that they had probably misnamed it. So the official state fossil of Colorado, sorry Rockies, didn't exist. T-Rex, you guys remember this? This was the first original. He dragged his tail on the ground like you see in this picture here. But then came the controversy, was it cold-blooded or warm-blooded? Based upon how fast it could run. And based upon the size of his teeth, which could snap in a battle, that maybe it wasn't a hunter, it was really a scavenger, because the teeth would snap off too easily if it bit into a 2-ton triceratops or something. And now they say that T-Rex was a feathered dinosaur. So this is so unlike what I grew up with. The T-Rex is now a gigantic bird, they say. Bottom line, you get the picture? They're not really certain. They're still educated guesswork. Look at this Allosaurus in Dallas, Texas. Look at the skeleton. Things have certainly changed. My Chinese student asked me about, are these bones real? Because they told me that the Chinese teachers take them to a museum and tell them that all the bones you see here are real. While what you found is that the vast majority of dinosaur reconstruction are not a real bone. Allosaurus, what bone did they discover? Just one. Just one. A shin bone. That's all they ever found. And for that one shin bone, they said this Allosaurus is how they reconstructed it. Or look at Portosaurus. They found only 4 bits of bones, as you see here in white. Or how about Argentinosaurus? You find that the only bones they discovered were the one in white. The one that's in gray was actually inferred, the connecting pieces. And by comparing it with 6 different dinosaurs, they just imagined that it must have looked like this with that kind of tail and neck. Keep in mind, all they really have are just the bones in white, nothing else. And the same thing here. All right, look at this one in Australia. This is one of the most complete sauropods ever found. Now, notice this. If this is one of the most complete ever found in Australia, you know something funny? Most of the bones are missing. Most of the bones are not there. Everything else had to be inferred. Yet this was one of the most complete ever found. Look at Velocep in late Jurassic Germany. We have this tiny little dinosaur. It was based upon the discovery of just one partial shin bone. That's all they found. And from there, they believed that this is how it looked. How scientific is that? Or look at AVIPs. Now look at this. 3 different drawings from the same source, dinosaurfact.net. One looks very lizard-like, one looked almost like a mammal on 4, and the other one looks very much like a turkey or chicken. All they based upon was one fused bird-like foot bone. That's all they ever discovered. One fused bird-like bone. No skulls, no vertebrae, no ribs. This is all they ever found. Or Kakura in South Central Australia. This is how they drew it looked like. It was based upon one shin bone and one possible toe bone, which they're not even sure if it belonged to that creature. But from that basis, they conjured up this creature, Kakura. Or Dinosaurs in Boulogne, France, late Jurassic. This was based upon one tailbone that they since lost. So they don't even have the evidence. Or Sinosauros in China. Did it look like this creature you have here, a tiny little creature? Or is it this gigantic sea monster with a sail on its back? Now, they don't look at all alike. Yet, from the same bones, they believe it looked like either this one on top or the one in the bottom. What's the evidence for it? 4 scattered teeth. Well, you see 5 here because they're not sure if the last 2 are actually part of the same tooth or if it's actually 2 separate teeth. So this is all they ever found was 4 scattered teeth fragments. No sail, no ribs, no teeth, no head, skulls, or anything else. That's the total evidence they found. Or like this of Seats here. They said that there's so few fossils of this creature, they had to compare with other dinosaurs to imagine how it might have looked like. And that's how they drew it. And then they said, this is Seats, a new type of T-Rex in the mid-Cretaceous era. Now, what I'm pointing out, this is actually, believe it or not, this is the norm. The Velociraptor, like you see in Jurassic Park, you see in the bottom, the raptors. This is how they drew it in 1988. Then in 1998, they drew the same creature with beginning to have a little bit of hair. In 2005, they show it with feathers. And now, 2016, they show it almost like a full-blown bird. Appalachiosaurus. One scientist, after they saw the reconstruction, said, hey, I think they got things mixed up. Maybe they got the legs and arms switched. He said, I've seen the original display in the original mount. It had big arms. But now look what they have it. They moved that arm to the leg, and they now have it with tiny little arms. Or see, terrible hands, Dinosaurs. All right, here's how they believe it looked in 1970. And what's the evidence? This is all they found. They have found only one, and it is two arms. Two arms, so they call it terrible hands. But they found no other parts of it. So now, in 2014, they said, this is how it looked. But notice there's no evidence it had hair or feathers or what color it was. All this is just fanciful imagination. So we also have, in case you don't know, modern day birds live with dinosaurs. They said Archaeopteryx is a primordial bird, and that birds evolved during the days of the mammals much later on. But they discovered in 1998, published in Nature magazine, published here in Berkeley and at UC Berkeley, that they found fossils of a modern day parrot living during the age of dinosaurs. Well, the problem is that they believe it was a macaw. And he said macaws are very sensitive to atmospheric changes, dust and dirt. They suffer terribly when there's a change in even temperature and air pressure. But if there was a catastrophic atmospheric change brought about by a supposed asteroid collision, which ended the dinosaurs, why do we still have parrots and macaws today when they're so sensitive to atmospheric changes? These are good scientific questions to ponder. Or here at the LA County Museum of Natural History, the Protoceratops versus a Velociraptor. We have seen this evidence of a Protoceratops fighting a raptor. Even the displaces, it appears that some sort of flood entombed in while they're in the midst of combat. While they're fighting each other, they didn't realize a flood was coming their way, and it just dumped a huge amount of mud right on top and froze them in the position of battle before they could even separate. Oh, you guys all know this. They said this is the most complete skeleton ever found of an ancestral human being. And they call it Lucy, Dr. Donald Johanson. And every textbook, every website says Lucy is the most complete skeleton found. It's 40% complete. But this is just simply not true. The 40% is actually a misquotation. The original article said the torso, you know, the torso, what I'm pointing and circling here, that was about 40% complete. It didn't mean 40% of the skeleton, but every textbook, every website cut out the word torso. Just count it, do the math yourself. We have 207 bones in our body, the average adult person. If you count the number, we don't have 40% of the bones. Now, what they did was this. They counted, see this rib here? They count one. Oh, that's one rib bone, two rib bone, three rib, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can't count like that. This is one rib. That's not three ribs. This is one rib, not two ribs. This is one bone here, not two arm bones. And so they inflated their numbers. If you count how many bones were actually found, Lucy was actually less than 15% complete, and they never point that out in textbook. But new scientists, they came out that this bone here, it's supposed to be small, bigger, 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 bigger. But notice here, small, bigger, smaller than bigger, bigger. They said that this bone is believed to have come from the baboon and doesn't belong to this creature at all. Article came out in a newspaper. Creationists say dinosaurs live with man. They talk about how Soviet scientists dated, carbon-14 dated dinosaur bones, and they're 10,000 to 30,000 years old. But notice what Leonard Kristalka, the curator of the Carnegie Museum, said. He says, I don't care what they come up with. I don't care what evidence they come up. I won't believe. Dinosaurs died out 66 million years ago, and that's that. Well, how scientific is that when a scientist says, I won't listen to the evidence? All right. Well, they dated more bones and they found out that this was the case. Here is for the University of Arizona, actual carbon-14 dating of dinosaur bones. They're 10,000 and 16,000 years old. Here are different dinosaur bones, the numerous ones found in different parts of the world. There are some that's not listed on this chart here, but in China and elsewhere. And in every case, the dinosaur bones were dated from about in the 20 to the 30s to the 40,000s of years. University of Georgia were sent dinosaur bones, which they dated, and they were dated to be 33 to 41,000 years old. They had a conference in Singapore, the Asia Oceanic Geoscience Society. They gave a presentation. Scientists will point out that they did a study of dozens of dinosaur bones, and every single one, they didn't pick and choose them. They got them from different parts of the world, different ages, and every single one of them had carbon-14 in it. Well, what happens is that some people in Singapore complained that they were teaching things that sound like it might be contrary to the theory of evolution. So what happened is that the chair of the conference said there's obviously an error in your report, so we're going to take down your exhibit. When the scientists who held the conference said, well, can you show us what the error was? They were silent. They probably never looked into it. And in the University of Georgia, they wrote back to the researcher and says, I want to let you know, do not send any dinosaur bones. I've ordered my staff not to date any dinosaur bones with carbon-14. Now, what kind of science is this when we say, I don't want you to test it? That's not scientific. All right? But you have to understand that all coal sea deposits, all diamonds, all the dinosaur bones that have tested have had carbon-14, which show that it could be in a matter of tens of thousands of years of age, tens and tens of thousands of years. Here's just a small sampling here that have been tested and found to have original soft tissue. And here we find that we even have some 5 of them older than dinosaur age that we've actually discovered soft tissue. These things are rarely reported here. The Bible talks about Leviathan, about these gigantic creatures that live. They could not have used the word dinosaur because the word dinosaur was not coined until, Richard Owens in 1840. Herodotus, he describes an account of Egypt, that he went down to Egypt and he personally eyewitnessed something that looked like flying reptiles. They looked like water snakes. They had scales. They were black in color, but they had wings like a bat and it flew. They were huddled in a tree. When he threw a rock at it, they flew away. Alexander the Great recorded that he and his crew saw a gigantic dragon that was probably maybe 100 feet long. Some of his lieutenants reported that the Indian king kept reptiles that were 100 feet long. And other rulers said they brought some of these dragons back to life in Ethiopia. Marco Polo wrote that he had seen some gigantic dragon-like creatures, and on more than one occasion, and he's witnessed several of them as it was. In Blanton, Utah, here is a drawing by a rock art expert who saw that there was a drawing that appears to be a dinosaur, an ancient native Indian artwork. How could they have drawn this at a time when this thing is dated before picture books on dinosaurs developed? Dennis Slifer here mentions that they found this other rock carving of a dinosaur that was referred to here. And in this area, later on, they did find fossils of long-necked sauropods. In Cambodia, they found, this column here, which had all these animals of modern day real animals. None of them are fictitious animals. But in there, they said they found what was a stegosaurus. Found in different, and all these are secular sources that said this is apparently a stegosaurus. And this here, the Doheny Scientific Expedition, Dr. Samuel Hubbard from UC Berkeley wrote in 1925 for the California Museum of Natural History that this, now notice the underline was his underline, not mine. He underlined the fact that some prehistoric man made a pictograph of a dinosaur on the walls of this canyon upsets completely all of our theories regarding the antiquity of man. In Carlisle Cathedral in England, where the bishop is buried here, underneath the carpet, if you lift the carpet, you see along the strip here, a gold strip of animals here, of which includes 2 sauropods or long-necked dinosaurs with their necks wrapped around each other. Summary. Dinosaurs living millions of years ago is taught as a proof of macroevolution. But the geologic column, the carbon-14 dating, the discovery of soft tissue found blood and collagen and dinosaur fossil all indicate that maybe, just maybe they're not as old as popularly believed. But what we do know is that we can't trust what God says because he was there to witness it all. In 1 Peter chapter 3, regard Christ as holy in your heart. We can't regard him as holy if we don't believe in him, but that he did come and die for us. Whenever as someone asks you, why do you believe? Be prepared to defend it. Yet do it with respectful humility, maintain a good conscience. As you recall from last week's, 2 weeks ago from my last study, I have no problem with evolution. I have no problem in an old earth. No problem at all. It doesn't ruffle my feathers at all. I just don't like it when people insist that what they teach is facts and that anyone who disagree with them are ignorant. But when they try to persecute you for disagreeing with them here. So let us understand that dinosaurs are facts. But how do you interpret them? It's a question that we all need to ask ourselves here.